you so much, David. Hi, I'm Heidi Connolly, the Celestial Professor, author, intuitive medium, and bereavement coach, and life coach for highly sensitive people. I'm here to talk to you today about that place where body and mind meet spirit. The place of the truest, purest, most loving, and unconditional connection there is. Right away, there's the rub. Because the problem with talking about any illness is the label itself. When we say anything like, I have diabetes, I have chronic fatigue, I've always had a bad back, we are owning it. Owning and living every aspect of that imbalanced state that keeps us tethered to it. And while applying labels is inevitable, given our need for language and communication, labeling anything as an illness or disease means labeling it as something bad. And if something is bad, then that just means it becomes about hating it and wanting to change it and fearing it and fighting it. All vibrational responses that keep us trapped in the very energy of whatever we would like to free ourselves from. It's impossible to feel good when you're hating, criticizing, fighting. Sure, you might feel that you are letting go of repressed emotion during the process, but the body translates the energy behind those emotions and turns them inward. Where? Into the body. Once you begin to understand that everything is energy at its root, you realize that even saying those kinds of words just feels plain lousy. Louise Hay, author of You Can Heal Your Life, was one of the pioneers of the school of thought that says that we are more than our bodies, that our minds, our thoughts, our emotions, our beliefs all contribute to what takes place in our bodies. On her list of illnesses, she included diabetes, which she indicates as a longing for what might have been, or a great need to control, or deep sorrow, the feeling that no sweetness remains in one's life. I don't know about you, but I can relate to some of those statements. Who among us can truly say we have never longed for what could have been? Perhaps the loving environment we never had, or the path we never traveled to achieve our goals. Who has felt a need to control what they felt powerless to control as a child? Perhaps the way food was allotted, or the way we were body shamed. Or maybe you harbor a deep sorrow in life, a life that's devoid of the joy you always wished for. That's sweetness. When viewed with this perspective, is it any surprise that diabetes is such a dire affliction in our society? Behind every disease, every lack of ease, every imbalance in the body, lies its foundational consciousness. The energy of that dis-ease, the energy of that imbalance. In the case of diabetes, the energy that speaks to the need, desire, passion, cravings related to sweetness. The need for something you don't get enough of or can't trust you'll ever get enough of. It's my belief that the entire world can be viewed through either of two lenses. The lens that clarifies how we are all part of the greater oneness, whatever that means to us, or the lens that underscores the idea that we are all separate beings. Let's start with the idea on a purely physical level. Obviously, we are individual beings, containers of skin housing hearts and lungs and bones and muscles, etc. In other words, although our bodies may touch up against each other, they are not created to merge, to connect through their skin containers. On the other hand, in every other way, we are, in fact, not separate. We are, in fact, connected. How we connect is a matter of how we choose to interact with the world emotionally, energetically, and spiritually. The more we get in touch with how our words feel when we say them and how our bodies feel when we react to our environment, the more we begin to understand that there is so much more going on than meets the naked eye. To me, being connected means understanding that while my physical body is separate from other physical bodies, the rest of me is not. How do I know that? All it takes is one situation where I feel affected by the people around me to realize that being affected is something that happens to everyone. It's pretty much impossible to not be affected by your environment, which includes other people and their emotional, energetic states of being. What does this have to do with our summit on a physical, mental condition like diabetes? Well, consider the way your mind instructs your body to move in a certain direction, to lift that barbell one more time, to push through that finish line. Using psychologically focused techniques to increase performance has been a widely accepted method for as long as humankind has existed. I would venture to say that even in cave people times, before language, when the voice inside your head was only grunts, those grunts were saying, keep going, body. You want to survive, don't you? You want to eat. If you want to eat, you have to get out there and hunt. Or take twins. There has to be a reason that two people so alike genetically and in the way they're nurtured environmentally can be so different. An elusive component, psychological, emotional, and spiritual, that changes the trajectory of their lives, sometimes profoundly. The way one twin with the exact same illness as their counterpart can receive identical treatment under identical conditions, and that twin ultimately dies, yet the other twin thrives. How is it that we accept so easily the sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't mentality when it comes to our bodies, medical treatment, pharmaceuticals, etc.? Why does it seem preferable to explain away the idea that there is something else, something we might not see with our eyes, that something is in play? It's apparent that separatist thought and belief leads to nothing less than more isolation and segregation and more imbalance that leads to disease. You can call it a spiritual outlook, conscious awareness, it really doesn't matter. But more and more science, along with the general population, is learning that it can no longer deny the connection between our bodies and the disease in our bodies and our outlook on life. Since the 60s, Dr. Bruce Lipton has studied epigenetics, which basically says that the old belief of genetic determinism that says you're a victim of your heredity, your genetic makeup, and that genes control the evolution of your life, that idea is losing its traction in the scientific world. For example, there are no genes that cause cancer. It's a scientific fact that no gene can predict you will automatically have cancer. There are genes associated with cancer, but they don't actually cause it. For example, 50% of women with the gene for breast cancer don't get it. That wouldn't be true if the gene's presence determined a life's outcome. So what does it mean for us? That genes cannot control their activity. It's their environment that matters. And part of that environment is made up of our consciousness, which is what interprets that environment and ultimately controls those genetics. If we're not living in health and harmony in the world we're in, it's as if there's what Dr. Lipton calls a burning cauldron in our body. For this reason, you can eliminate cells, tumors, etc. through surgery and radiation, chemotherapy, or take medicine to regulate blood sugar. But if the cells are not the actual cause, you're focusing on the wrong target. It's the consciousness behind the illness that matters, because the illness is a symptom of disharmony. Now, nobody goes around saying, I want diabetes. But our bodies are natural expressions of the subconscious programming we have running that can't help expressing whatever disharmony exists in the life we're living. So where does this so-called new understanding take us? Well, it's clear that our consciousness is what alters the paradigm around healing. Quantum physics proves that everything is energy, that the physical reality is really just an illusion or an expression of various forms of energy. If we look at diabetes as a consequence of energy, then look at the source of that diabetes, the source is also energy. Bruce Lipton tells us that the mind is the equivalent of government. This government talks to and organizes the function of our cells. So while we go around blaming the cells for disease, it turns out that less than 1% of all disease is attributable to the genetics of the cells. This is proof that what creates disease is the government that is controlling those cells. The cells are responding to the consciousness. So it's not about eliminating the cells, but rewriting and rewiring our consciousness. Now that we've reached a point where our minds are opening to the possibility of the way our bodies connect to consciousness, which I also like to call energy or spirit, the question becomes, are you being sweet to you? From the perspective of your subconscious. For example, do you believe you deserve joy? Do you know what true joy feels like? Do you have a fear about joy, that if you experience it, it will be all too fleeting, that it will be limited, that you won't get all you need or want? The need for sweetness is something every single soul is born with. The fact that so many of us experience so little of it is a discouraging statement. Yet, just as we can open our minds to new ways of thinking, we can also begin to open our hearts to new ways of experiencing life. As Joe Dispenza, author of The Biology of Belief, says, if you change the information in the field, you change the matter. Or if you change your consciousness to be reflected in your subconscious and ultimately communicated to your spirit, your physical body will also reflect that change. He says that the great thing about thoughts is that they have no more power than the power we give them. What many people are discovering is that their blood sugar regulation improves when they spend more time in uplifting, positive states. How they feel deep down is actually expressed in their blood sugar levels. The thing is that this is not simply a matter of positive thinking or affirmations. It's about practicing feelings that ultimately shift both emotional and somatic states of being that ultimately change biology, chemistry, hormones, even genes. So just to be clear, I am not talking about undermining the physiological components and their relationship to illness. It's about questioning how our emotional reactions lead to physical and physiological imbalances so that we can begin shifting how our body is responding. And it can happen so quickly. If you've ever experienced fear where you suddenly, immediately begin to sweat, you know that if it can happen that quickly, You can also react differently that quickly, right? We can respond differently in a way that redirects our emotional, energetic trajectory. I'd like to touch on the energetic component of emotional abuse because I think it's a really important component of this discussion. The mind-body-spirit connection, that equation has become something of a catchphrase, which is all well and good. But we need to truly apply ourselves to the methods we can use to identify, direct, and apply our energetic focus if we choose to allow and invite in true transformation. So, do you believe you're unlovable, unworthy? Do you live in a perpetual state of fear or anxiety, worry, concern that something bad will happen? How can we pretend to ourselves that such thoughts do not have an effect on our bodies when the evidence is so obvious? Does our heart not pound when we are afraid? Do our eyes not shed tears when we are moved by emotional thoughts and feelings? When did we decide our minds should be so divorced from our bodily sensations? Again, this is where the rubber meets the road and where spirit joins the team. It's not possible to define spirit without that long stroll down an inevitable path of discourse. I mean, who can possibly say that it's as easy or obvious as defining table or chair? Still, the dictionary would say that spirit is the non-physical part of a person, which is the seat of emotions and character, the soul, and that we tend to seek a harmony between body and spirit. That it's the force within a human being thought to give the body life, energy, and power. So if we're looking for a true recipe for well-being, and spirit is that force within a human being thought to give the body life, energy, and power, then energy is naturally a component of spirit. Whether we use the body to push or pull, react or restrain, produce or withdraw, energy is at the core of everything we do. It's also the core attribute of spirit. One of the issues people seem to have with the idea of spiritual or the spiritual approach is its potential link to religion. If we remove that chain, we are free to view spirituality as a different kind of link, the kind that links thought and mind and body through energy. What really matters is the knowledge that the energy is at work that creates the results we seek. Since illness is a consequence of energy, we need to look at the source of the energetic construct that created the environment where it could flourish. Spirituality to me is a way of seeing myself in the physical realm through the lens of a larger consciousness. Now I understand that what I don't see, the energy behind the scenes expressing itself every moment on all levels, dimensions, and planes, is more important than what my eyes see, my ears hear, and my nose smells. While those things are crucial to a human experience, it's only by understanding the frequencies of the energies creating those conditions that we can begin to live in a way that is far more healthy, joyful, and fulfilling. For me, music is one way to encapsulate and disseminate energetic frequencies that are easily received by our mental and physical beings. In other words, without resistance. The purpose of the following brief guided meditation is to recode any beliefs around illness you choose to shift. settle into your seat and take a breath in through your nose, all the way down to your diaphragm, and let it out through your mouth. As you continue to breathe in and out, let your gaze soften and lessen focus until they slowly want to close. Imagine you are on a path, walking through a beautiful, lush, green forest, where the sun shines through the trees to warm your body, and a light breeze cools the perspiration from your face and arms. You feel safe and secure knowing that the path you're on will shortly lead you to your destination, the field of universal consciousness. Sure enough, up ahead, the trees part and you see a field that welcomes you in with its colorful wildflowers and the hum of bees pollinating those flowers. The music you hear and are easily absorbing in the background is encoded with the vibrations of ease, comfort, peace, and joy. The music has been specifically created with spirit to bring the sweetness of self-acceptance without fear of recrimination or a lack of deservedness, to bring it straight into your life. The affirmation embedded in the music goes like this: everything I need and want is at my fingertips in support of loving myself and knowing that Source supplies everything I need to recognize, appreciate, and integrate sweetness and joy in my life. And now it's time to come back into your present physical environment. When you are ready, slowly open your eyes. I'd like to thank you for being here today and for being open to new ways of projecting into and reflecting the world through your conscious awareness. And don't forget, energy exists. It exists in everything, everywhere, all the time. It's up to us to engage with it as we desire. If you would like more information about my coaching, mediumship, books, courses, or spirit-guided music, including the music you heard today called Sweet, bringing in sweetness on every level of being, just go to HeidiConnolly.com. I hope to see you there, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart.